Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Shane and I'm delighted to be joined by Saud Erikad, who will be talking to you about taking information governance to the next level. Remember to join in the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is ESPC17. After the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you have for Saud in the questions window. Some questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and you will be notified by email when it is available. Also, don't forget our early bird. Prices end in 9 days' time. See sharepointeurope.com for full details. And now, I'm going to pass you over to our webinar presenter, Saud Erikad. Hello, Saud.
Hi, Shane. Thanks so much for the introduction. Thanks, everyone, for joining the webinar today. My name's Saud Erikad, as Shane introduced me, and I'd like to take you through taking information governance to the next level. What we'll do in the following slides is go through some real-world examples of information governance and regulation. In addition, we'll also take a look at some very useful industry measures and information gathered from the SharePoint community about their information governance and how that's implemented. Very well. Do feel free to keep your questions until the end of the presentation. You can then use the questions box, the chat box in GoToMeeting to ask any question you have. So let's get started. I'd like to start with a definition of information governance. This is a definition according to Gartner. Now, information governance in their understanding spans the decisions around accountability and an accountability framework, basically, deciding on rights, who has access to data, and it spans really all aspects, all use of data. So as you can see here, the valuation, creation, storage, editing, archiving, and deleting information. In general, if governance is done correctly, it can drive business performance. It can be something that an organization distinguishes itself against its competition through a clean governance, and with that added security to their information. The information governance landscape is changing. It has been changing for the last couple of years. Now, what we're used to, or 10 years ago, information governance was something that was decided in the IT group, the CIO was involved, and the IT group of an organization. In today's day and age, what we're seeing is we're currently preparing for EU-wide regulation, GDPR, and in addition to that, I'd like to take a real-world example to information governance being pushed through, let's say, the government, for example. The highlighted 23 NYC RR 500 is a recent regulation about cybersecurity that was implemented in the state of New York and statewide. And I'd like to use this real-world example to show that the pushing of governance as well as regulation from a government level can have implications for the organization. In terms of the regulation in New York State, they have implemented a rule that every organization needs to have a chief information security officer. That was pushed. The companies have a certain window to implement this role, and this role is itself actually governed. So there's certain aspects of the role, certain levels of communication that have to be adhered to. One of the things is mandatory written annual reports. Now, this officer obviously is taking organizations from paper-based more to digital processes. It is very important to ensure the integrity, the confidentiality, and security of non-public company information, and also have a cybersecurity policy and procedures available. These procedures can then be checked for their effectiveness, and the Chief Information Security Officer really has to report on all events and breaches to C-level management in order to optimize the situation. So going forward, we're looking at governance in today's world. The key drivers for digital transformation in today's world are really cloud technologies popping up. Then we have a very high level of consumerization of IT, and with that, consumers have a certain expectation to corporate IT. We have a mobile workforce, which through the consumerization has certain expectations they want met. Of course, we have increased regulatory pressures. One example of those is the NY state regulation that I presented to you. Users do have more and more 24/7 demands, and organizations spanning multiple countries also need their environments to be on all the time as they are spanning different time zones. In today's day and age, we're also dealing with a very increased level of threat to data. It's kind of fashionable to attack data rather than other means these days. Information governance itself has a lot of business drivers. These drivers here were filtered from an AIM report, which I will cover later in the presentation. As you can see here, obviously governance is driven by productivity. The main 3 points that governance is driven by are compliance, preventing data loss, and knowledge sharing. Obviously, process efficiency is of high importance for organizations, as high efficiency is lower cost, and also the ability to defend or delete information when, let's say, a device is out of my user's hand is also an important aspect, an important driver for governance. Historically, governance has always been driven from the top down. In this triangle, you can see the board of directors at the top, and the information steward is a term that was coined by Gartner. And basically, the meaning of information steward is the person that is actually responsible for the data and, responsible for handling the data in the organization. So, as you can see here, the left-hand arrow pointing down are the rules and the vision that the board of directors decides, and they can be pushed down through policies. Now, these policies are, of course, of value, but it's very important to be able to measure the success of these policies, and that's where the reporting from the information stewards back to the board of directors is crucial and critical, because only that does allow improving and also ensuring that those policies are met. Historically, Collegal has been in the business of empowering governed roles. So governed roles in this case are roles that have a high requirement for security, a high requirement for the data not coming out of hand. Obviously, the data should be findable for these governance roles as well. Now, these roles have a higher requirement when it comes to accessing the right data and also being able to access data, let's say, when offline. Very well. So, one other study I'd like to also talk about are the challenges with implementing information governance. So, deciding a set of rules is one side of the coin. Then the other side of the coin, of course, is implementing and pushing these rules down, and also changing organization culture in a way that the governance rules are adhered to. That, of course, poses a challenge for IT teams, and it poses a difficulty that you have to change the way users work and the way users handle data, see data. And that proves to be a challenge for some organizations. The biggest issues also from that AIM study, the users or the participants were asked, what have been the 3 biggest issues in creating an information governance policy? As you can see here, enforcing it once completed is the biggest challenge that is named here. Obviously, there are other challenges like getting the users interested. I think that can also be described as the users changing their culture and use data. When it comes to having the right people at the table, that is so. Here, again, we're looking at an AIM study and the results of that AIM study about creating information governance and what the importance is about, what the challenges are about creating information governance. Going further, it's very important to realize and notice that the information we are trying to build information governance for is scattered across multiple systems. It's only in the last decade or so that organizations have been consolidating their data and document management systems that are readily available. Beforehand, according to this Osterman research white paper, most of the data still residing in file servers. I do believe that that's still accurate. A very important aspect to consider here when talking about governance is that a high percentage of data exists in the organization in form of email. And that's really where the importance of email management comes in, because it's a considerable amount of company data that comes in form of email files. So as you can see, contrary to the general belief, the use of email is still growing. It is still something that is expected to grow up to 2020 with a growth rate of approximately 5%. So you can see here the amounts of email being sent per day, and this is a statistic basically from Radicati Group in 2016. So email is not over yet. It's still a very important aspect of our data overall and of our information governance policy. So going back to the AIM to the AIM research and the AIM results, what you can see here is that most users have no rules around email management. So the governance lacks for email, even though a very high amount of data in the organization is email. you can see that only 8% of the people answering this questionnaire have a proper email governance or email rules around email and how to archive email. Here comes the challenge, because email itself is the medium used most in court cases and litigation. But still, according to the results that we've seen, the information governance around email is still lacking in a lot of organizations. So we have a large amount of data that is not being governed in the best way possible. Unfortunately, there's not many tools that can be used to combine your email server and your SharePoint server. What we've seen in the industry is that more and more of our customers actually utilize their document management system for email as well, and that they understand that, well, email our correspondence about the data that I have, so they are kept in the same repository as you would keep your standard company data. Mobility itself can increase the risk of the of email, because of course we have emails out of the organization, and there needs to be governance rules around the use of email in a mobile environment. As you can see here, according to AIM, mobility and the access to mobile data from the access to data from mobile devices is something that comes approximately 10th place here in this questionnaire. So it's not an important element for organizations to implement, or at least most organizations have that with a low priority to implement. Colleague and AIM has done their own research last year, and what we found is that the main requirement for SharePoint mobility is being able to control document distribution. So which document is going to your device, when is it going, when was the last thing done, is it up-to-date data? That's data that's important to the people we asked in our questionnaire. What we find in general is that often the difficulty of implementing governance can have an impact to productivity. So basically, with the added governance, with the restrictions to your users feel that their productivity has decreased. And that, of course, leaves a productivity gap for the users. It is of utmost importance to ensure that the implementation of your governance policies do not end up costing your users very valuable productivity. There's always an important balancing act in today's digital workplace. That stems from a high level of consumerization. So we have worker productivity, which workers would like to have the same solutions or similar solutions to what they have on their private mobile devices. They want to be able to access their data, their company data, from anywhere. The user experience and having a single pane of glass for the users to access the data is, of course, important for the user and has a high level of comfort. And obviously, with users being encouraged to use their own devices, they want to use apps to access their data and have a high level of productivity. All that has to be balanced with the requirements of the organization. In that case, the requirement of the organization being the information governance policy. So while users want to access data from everywhere, it needs to be secure. They want to use their own devices and be mobile, but the data needs to be prevented from going into the wrong hands. Obviously, ensuring compliance and being able to report and audit on that compliance are also of very high importance for the organization. And that's the balancing act that we always have to consider when we're implementing governance solutions. So when implementing governance, it is recommended to always measure and check what you've implemented and to make sure that what you've implemented is giving you the right results. So in here you can use a lean approach, which basically from building the application or building the solution, you are very oriented around your results and very oriented around your policies. You should have a way of measuring user behavior, and with that then learn from the information governance you've implemented and then take that back to improve and refine your user experience. In general, for Caligo, what we find is that we're SharePoint centric. Our customers are often SharePoint centric. SharePoint itself is now a leader, as you can see here in the Forrester quadrant. It's in the top right corner. It's moved up there in the various versions of SharePoint. And Microsoft themselves have updated us in a recent webinar that basically 85% of Fortune 500 companies are using SharePoint and OneDrive in their organization. So use of SharePoint is still ever growing, and I think will keep increasing as such. So how does Caligo add to the functionalities of SharePoint? In general, you have here the emails and documents residing in multiple repositories, file shares, email servers, and SharePoint. You can provide access to the apps that Caligo provides. The apps are always built natively, so they have some native functionality for Android, Windows, Apple, and Mac OS X as well. The Caligo console is an Azure-based governance and management console that allows you to apply policies to your applications and then also reports. So you have that way of measuring and optimizing your productivity for your users. Here's the whole thing is shown a bit different. So here's your build, utilize, and then optimize. So basically you have the policies here, in the management console, as you can see here. This is a screenshot of our iOS app, and here you can see the reporting that is available in console, allowing you to report on the usage of these solutions. So the main aim is, of course, achieving information governance, but maintaining a high level of productivity. Doing that, basically, you can achieve a high user adoption and also a high level of governance using the right tools, making it easier for your users to, of course, be safe and secure and following governance policies, but still being agile and being able to access content how they need to. So Caligo can help you extend your SharePoint and Office 365 governance. One important factor here is that Caligo allows you to push the content to your users. So that decreases the need for onboarding, decreases the need for training. Also, you can make sure that the right content reaches the right user. Obviously, with Caligo, the console and the management console, which is our information governance platform, it allows you to track usage, adoption, and compliance. And all our applications allow you to capture metadata when content is saved. Emails can be captured as records with all the metadata, and you can basically push policies to your users and to your devices, preventing or managing the usage of the app as you would need it. Governance can be provided even when users are offline, so the reporting is then given back to the console once online again. And productivity can be increased through discovery and collaboration. Caligo has released a ebook with Microsoft together. It's called Better Together. To have a glance over that if you so wish to, and also let us know if you have any questions to information governance in general. So I've reached the end of my presentation, and I'll pass back to Shane. Thanks everyone for bearing with me regardless of the technical issues, and back to you, Shane.
Thanks, Saud. Yeah, really good. And we have some questions here. The first one is, can we get a copy of the slide deck? So I'm guessing that if you can send it to me, I can send it to everyone that's attended the webinar. How does that sound?
Yes, absolutely. That's absolutely not a problem and doable, yes.
Okay, brilliant. First question, what is the future-proof possibility for information governance for all the site collections / Office 365 groups that will be created in Office 365? Managed metadata has been used in on-prem SharePoint solutions earlier for categorizing content, but this is not possible to use on site collection level. What would you advise us to use? Would you think that managed metadata will be deprecated?
I don't think that managed metadata will be depreciated anytime soon. With the introduction of the metadata store, I think that's an infrastructure that is here to stay for the time being. Obviously, taxonomy and being able to extract metadata and also add metadata to documents when adding them to SharePoint is an important aspect of and an important basis for governance in general. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Okay, great. Regarding the technology, is there a preferred governance method to use, e.g. PMI, as in Project Management Institute? Hello, Saud.
Yes.
So I don't know if you got that question. Yeah, sure.
Sorry?
So it's regardless of the technology, is there a preferred governance method to be used, e.g. PMI, as in the Project Management Institute?
There's no certain governance regulations or policies that I would advise in this case. So your governance is something that can be very straightforward and basic. When you're building your SharePoint, obviously having templates and having the right metadata, the right taxonomy available is already a very good basis for starting your governance policies.
Okay. Can you hear me, Saud?
Yes, I can, Shane.
Oh, great. Okay. Brilliant. We'll move on to the next question. What are the first steps to consider when implementing an information governance policy for SharePoint or Office 365?
Sure. So as I just mentioned in the previous reply, I would always recommend to start with the out-of-the-box functionality, the out-of-the-box features, basic stuff like templates, document types, content types. I'd also recommend the use of document sets with their managed metadata, with their mandatory metadata or default metadata. So those are all very straightforward out-of-the-box tools that anyone can implement in his organization to build a governance policy on top.
Great. Our company uses SharePoint Office 365 in a hybrid setup. What out-of-the-box features can we utilize to improve our information governance?
Yeah, obviously in a hybrid environment, you can run the some cloud-based services. So that would allow you to implement a governance policy. When it comes to Collegal apps, at least, we do connect to Office 365 and SharePoint alike, and with that give the users the same usage and same experience, whether they're using Office 365 or they are using SharePoint or hybrid, of course.
Great. And finally, Microsoft provides a wide range of mobility features for SharePoint. What added value do third-party solutions provide?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in general, Microsoft, I would say, always leaves some functionality gaps for the community, for the third-party solutions. When it comes to Collegal, for example, Collegal differs and is different from the standard out-of-the-box solutions, as Collegal has a very high focus on the taxonomy, a very high focus on extracting metadata and applying that metadata during upload without having to check in the document if, let's say, a mandatory metadata field is not available. So all Collegal applications, regardless of the operating system you'd be using, have the capacity to connect to Office 365 or SharePoint.
Great. Okay, so that is it for the questions. Thank you so much for your time today.
Very well. Thanks a lot, Shane, and thanks everyone for joining. Apologies for the tech issues, and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Saud. Okay, everybody. Once again, thank you to Saud for a great presentation. I will get the slide deck from Saud, and I will share that with everyone. That is it for now. Join us for our next webinar on Tuesday, October 3rd, 2017, from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. CEST on Be More Productive with the new Office 365 features with Jeremy Take, VP of Product Technology at Hyperfish USA. Thank you for attending and have a great day.